Hey, this is Tim Ripper Owens.
This is Heather Michelle from Grave Shadow.
This is Bill from Stryker.
This is Amanda Kiernan from the Order of Chaos.
This is Drog from Winter Hymn, and you're listening to the Great Metal Debate Podcast.
Podcast listeners, this is Gone Dog back with another metal artist interview. Today we're reaching back into North America to speak with Dan from Quebec folk metalers Valfreya. Dan, thank you so much for joining us on the Great Metal Debate.
Very happy to be here.
I've been aware of you guys for some time. It really seems like Montreal and Toronto are all hotbeds of metal with a lot of acts that I just love. What's the Quebec metal scene like, and is it more competition or camaraderie?
I'd say it depends. Maybe a bit of both, but I would, tend more towards comrades and helping each other out. That's the way I see it anyway. So I don't tend to see that much competition between bands. So.
And do you have many other bands that follow in your specific genre, the folk and Viking type metal, or do you see more of a mix of power and melodic death and more of a variety of metal bands?
I would answer variety. To be honest, the folk metal type is getting a bit bigger over time, but I wouldn't say there's a whole lot of bands doing it right now. And I would say the most predominant style of metal in Quebec is probably technical death metal. It's we have a lot of bands going on and playing that kind of music, and it seems to be enjoyed by a lot of people here in Quebec. There's like Beyond Creation that's really big right now, guys from Quebec. There's tons of other bands, Terra Mobile. I could name a few just like that off the top of my head, but yeah, it seems to be really the type that's standing out right now, I would say.
And a band like Beyond Creation, who we've had on the podcast before, has been able to tour extensively. Does that give a lot of hope and promise to a local band to see a band from your area strike out and do so well?
Yeah, it's actually very positive. They're really nice people. I mean, I've had the chance to meet with Kevin, with Hugo, bass player, and they're great people, and I'm really happy for them. They're really great musicians. So yeah, I hope we can do the same, follow in their footsteps. But they're really on a surfing the wave right now, and I'm really, really happy for them.
Well, Dan, since this is your first time on our podcast, we'll ask you to give a brief, maybe perfunctory band bio, just how the band initially came to be and just those kind of background details.
Sure. Well, basically, Valfreya was started by Crook, our singer, in 2009. And that's it. She had basically songs she wanted to play with a band, but it was, she likes the kind of folk metal, but with a bit more aggressiveness in it, and that's how Valfreya came to be. Now, I joined the band just a few months later in October or November of 2009, and have been in the band since then, and that's roughly how it started, and that's it. We got our first album out in 2012, Path to Eternity, and that's it. Just released the most recent one, Promised Land, this past January, so roughly that's it.
And I want to talk a little bit about that first full-length album, Path to Eternity, from 2012. That was my first exposure to you, and I'll be honest, man, when I first heard that, I was blown away by you guys. That's one hell of an album.
Thank you.
What was the process coming up with that? I mean, were a lot of those tracks that you guys just riffed on the first few times you got together? How did that germinate?
Actually, most of the album was written by Crook. She made all the orchestrations, wrote the lyrics and everything. Basically, I came in and just readjusted the guitar parts. I actually also happened to do the bass parts. At that time, I was the single guitar player, and I think we just had a new bass player, but, I felt more comfortable taking care of the whole thing myself. But roughly, that's how it got done. So actually, orchestration was written first, and there was some guitar parts, but I readjusted them to, for them to make sense, so to speak. And there's the only one track that Krug didn't write that is fully is Beyond Illusions, which I had a good say in, and that's roughly how the process went at that time.
So what did that release do for the band again? I was blown away when I first heard it. I'm sure it had to have really carried you guys up to another level.
Yeah, well, it was really interesting. The response in general was pretty good. We got to sell quite a few copies over time and, digital albums and such. So, yeah, the response we were pretty happy with. We got to, do a tour, Canadian tour, that is, with Arcona, which we've done again later, but that's it. And, yeah, it opened a few doors for us. I mean, we got to open a few bigger shows like opening for Dark Tranquillity in Montreal. We did so as well in Toronto, and that's it. So, yeah, we were happy with the response we got overall.
And I have to ask, in advance of talking about the most recent album, Promised Land, did touring and sharing the stage with bands on the level of Arcona, who I just think are amazing, and Dark Tranquillity as well. I mean, they're one of the godfathers of melodic death metal. Did those experiences influence you all musically? I mean, did you take anything away from being with those bands and hearing their music live?
I'm going to speak for myself because I can't say for the others in the band, but I would say not really. I mean, I've been listening to Dark Tranquillity for a very long time, and not so much lately. I've kind of outgrown what they're doing. Not that I don't like it, but, not as interesting as I used to find it. But the fact touring with them, no, I wouldn't say it really affected the writing process or, the way the second album sounds.
Who you shared the stage with doesn't necessarily affect what's going on in your head or what you're producing, I guess, behind the scenes.
No, not so much for the production. I mean, it can affect the, let's say, the level of, being as professional as possible. You see them doing their thing, and, it's really, they're really prepared and making sure everything is done properly. And, I've seen guys in Arcona just like blow a fuse because things were not going their way and they had a big talk and such. So, little things that happen during a tour. But, seeing that, you realize you're not, even a band that's way more successful, you see they still have the same issues as smaller bands. I mean, dealing with other people, just, it's basically like dealing with family and, being around the same people all the time. So that's it. But no, as far as writing music and such, I don't find it affected anything.
Following Path to Eternity, your release of that album, you all took a little bit of a detour releasing an acoustic EP. I'm kind of surprised at that, given how aggressive some of the songs on Path to Eternity are. Why did the band decide to go that route?
I actually just, shot the idea like that at a band practice, like, oh, we should do an acoustic version of our songs. And I was not really, well, let's say half joking, but actually people took it seriously and they were like, well, why not? It might be a good idea. So, the idea started from there, and finally we ended up doing it. And basically we get to play a couple of extra shows acoustically. Like there's this medieval fair in Montreal in May, and we've been going there, so we get to sell our albums, both metal and acoustic. And that's it. It might have opened a few doors for us, so why not?
You're not the only band to do it, and it surprises me sometimes how often bands who really trade in very aggressive sounds and musical styles will go the acoustic route. I think it's very interesting talking to you as an artist, kind of how you consider that dichotomy.
Yeah, well, I mean, especially given the way Valfreya not works, but my singer's capabilities. Crook has a very beautiful singing voice, and I mean, she studied classical singing and such. So it was a chance to really use that a bit more and try to go for a smoother sound, but still be Valfreya and use basically the same orchestrations. With time, I wish we could have created a bit more differences over on the guitar parts. Put them, better. Not play them, but arrange them acoustically speaking for a guitar. But it is what it is. It's done. So maybe for the next one.
Well, that's interesting. Talking about the vocals, I had a specific question about vocals, and I just put it out there. I'm a big fan of bands that employ a variety of vocal styles, and so I'm curious, in the writing process, do you all as musicians have any concept about the differentiation between the harsh or clean vocals, or is that pretty much on Crook as the vocalist to choose where to maybe pull back and go sweet and melodic and where to just crush it vocally?
I would say for the most part, Crook decides what she wants where. But I mean, she's open to suggestions as well. If I'm like, listen, maybe we should try on this part to go smoother and such, I'm sure she'd, give it a try, see what can be done if it works, if it doesn't. But overall, she basically chooses what she wants, where she wants it as far as vocal goes.
Does that ever surprise you, her choices? I mean, as you're constructing a song together as a band, do you have in your mind the way things will play out, and then later as you're jamming on it or recording it goes in a different direction?
Actually, on at least one song on the newer album, Promised Land, there's that one part I was not expecting to get clean singing, but it just fits so well. But yeah, I was not expecting the part, so when I first heard it, I was like, oh, this is refreshing, it's kind of cool, So yeah, it happens once in a while, just testing out things while practicing.
Well, let's talk about that new album, Promised Land. I've had a chance to listen to it a few times. I was actually jamming to it at work today. My boss came in and gave me a kind of an odd look. There's just so much good stuff on there. In some ways, very similar to the earlier album, Path to Eternity, but also you guys, you're pulling out some different things. There's some different sounds and influences there. Tell me generally about that album and kind of your thought process behind it.
Well, I mean, okay, the idea started a little bit like Path to Eternity in the sense that we had this concept story we wanted to do, and so we were trying to go and fit the mood for the songs to go with the lyrics. But in the end, it was a long process. I mean, it took 5 years from Path to Eternity up to Promised Land. We wish we would have be able to complete it quicker, but things with what they are, this happened. And overall, I'd say if you listen to the album, it feels like not that we're searching for our sound, but you see different influences, like songs like Mortal Supremacy is almost more power metal-ish. Yes. And you have Evolution, which is more progressive type metal, less big on orchestrations. And you have some other songs that resemble closer to the songs on Path to Eternity, like Odin's Fury, Warlords, Pandemonium, which I find have more of that sound. And one thing we wanted to do is, as far as the guitar goes, get more interesting, intricate guitar parts versus the first album, which was sort of straightforward guitar-wise. Let's say I had to do it again, I would do it a bit differently. But with experience, it's a learning process. So I try to apply new things I've learned and make things a bit more interesting as far as I'm concerned. So that's pretty much it.
I was a little shocked at some of the songs just because I was anticipating more of a, quote, traditional pagan or folk metal sound, and you guys definitely were not going to be hemmed in by that.
No. I mean, I always felt we were a bit in between black metal and folk metal. And you hear some of that on Path to Eternity on certain tracks. You feel they're more dark, like a bit Inferno, for example, the second song on the on Path. And there's can't remember the name. But anyways, there's another song like that that's really black metal-ish on the album, and that's it. We've kind of recreated that for some parts, and I feel it's closer to the actual Valfreya sound. Although we do touch the more folkish side with on the new album with tracks like Promised Land and Peuple du Nord, which is the French song we inserted in there. So yeah.
Which I love, by the way, although I can't sing along with it because I can't speak a word of French. So
that's fine.
But it's still awesome. I can make the sounds along. So it's just been released, this new album, Promised Land. Have you been generally pleased with early reviews and responses from fans, folks who've heard it?
Yeah, so far, I mean, the comeback we've had is really nice. I hope we get some more, feedback overall. But yeah, so far, response, people are really happy with it, and we're glad because I mean, that's it. After all this time, you want to keep your fan base, so you want to come up with something new. But of course, we write some things we like as much as possible, and so we hope people will enjoy what we're doing, and that's it. So far, so good. So we'll see what the future holds.
Well, I'm not an artist. I'm not a musician, so I'm crazy intrigued by musicians and artists. In addition to listening to the music, I always like looking at the album art, and I understand that your own vocalist, Crook, provided the album art for this album. She must be a lady of a lot of different talents.
Yeah, actually, she also did the album cover for Pat, so she took care of the whole thing. So yeah, she has a lot on her plate though, because it's a lot of work, writing songs, booking shows, and all. So she does a lot of things. But yeah, that's just one more thing she does. So it's kind of helpful because I mean. Otherwise, to get that kind of work done, well, it's extra costs and everything. So at least, the things we're able to do properly, well, we do ourselves. So.
Right. Worth noting, you're an independent band, so it's a lot of DIY, do-it-yourself for you guys as far as making this band work.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, now that Promised Land has been released, what are the band's plans for the rest of the coming year? Have you all had a CD release type show? Do you have anything like that planned in the works?
Yeah, well, we did our release show on January 13th in Montreal. Now we were, planning on checking for additional shows, maybe a release in Quebec City and such, try to see what we can do. But we kind of find ourselves in a bind. We had our drummer quit on us, as well as the second guitar player. So we're kind of stuck for the moment. We'll have to, unfortunately find other musicians to replace them. So in the meantime, show-wise, we can't do much. But, we're trying to still promote the album and do what we can to keep things alive, so to speak.
And I think that dynamic is something that's just underappreciated by fans who rightly are excited about the bands that they love, excited wanting to get new material, see you guys on tour, and yet understand that many of the band members, they're having to make life decisions about raising a family, doing careers, staying with the band, and that can be a very difficult thing, and those real world life decisions can impact the band and set you back. I don't know if that's part of the reason that it was 5 years to develop the new album, but certainly going forward, that's always something that a independent band where folks have to have second jobs, you just have to take that into consideration.
Absolutely. And I mean, as for the 5 years, it's a different combination of things. It was creative differences. It was also getting along with bandmates sometimes. It needs to click, and if it doesn't, well, people leave for something else and such. So it's a lot of those things that can happen, and that's the thing. I mean, we were a 6-member group, so 6 people having to get along, wanting the same things, wanting to write the same type of music. It's not always easy. So it's like being in a couple, but with 6 people. So it can get pretty complex. And yes, for the jobs, definitely. I mean, it's kind of difficult because, I mean, you have to be able to play the shows, sometimes tour a little bit, but still keep your job and have money coming in because, like anybody else, we have things to pay, And there comes a time when you might be able to tour more, but then you don't make enough to live. But it gets difficult at a point, so you have to choose whether you want to keep pushing and live through maybe rough times for a while to try to go further and get bigger shows and such, or that's it. Some people pull out at that time because they're like, no, I can't do this, or as you said, family matters, or getting a kid, or sometimes people just decide they can't go on, and that's it. That's a lot of things the bands have to live, and it's life.
Well, Dan, I'm glad you're sticking with it, and Kirk as well. I'm excited about this new album, and certainly hope someday to get to see you guys on the road. Before we wrap up with you, remind our listeners what are the best ways for fans to purchase music and merchandise, including this new album, Promised Land, from Valfreya.
Sure. Well, probably the easiest way to get our music is you can find our Facebook page, which is facebook.com/Valfreya Metal, or just search for us there. It should be easy to find. From there, we have links to go on our either Bandcamp or on website like CD Baby and such, and you can purchase our music there. It's distributed on iTunes, on Amazon and such, so it should be easy to find, at least in digital format. And then as far as CDs, shirts and such, we're on a website called ifmerch.com, I believe. Hold on. And that's it. You can order the merchandise from there. Yeah, ifmerch.com. And that's it. You can find our merchandise there. So if you want to, get hooked up with a shirt, CD and such, well, they're on sale right there.
I can't encourage our listeners more to listen to this new album, Promised Land. Check out Valfreya. Again, their album, Path to Eternity, turned me on to them, and this new album has really blown me away. If you're a fan of folk metal, if you're a fan of black metal, if you're a fan of heavy metal, listen to Valfreya. You're going to find something there you like. Dan, thanks so much for taking the time to join us this evening.
You're very welcome. It was my pleasure.